Welcome to another episode Eye Level Podcast. Today is the first episode with a person from Scotland. Welcome, Christopher Docherty. Christopher worked lately in China as a coach educator and considers himself as a coach and also as a coaching educator. I'm happy to have you here today. Welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Toby. Yeah, great to be here. Hopefully everybody can understand me. It may be difficult, but you can translate if necessary.
Yeah, we jump directly in. Who are you, Chris?
Like you said, I'm a coach educator. I think my identity is a lot to do with my job because last 10 years I didn't do much apart from working. So I see myself through this lens of I work in football and I'm this person. If that was destroyed, then I don't know who I would be, but I see myself in that way.
So you said you were working for 10 years. Can you give us a little view on this last 10 years of your life?
Yeah, sure. So when I went to college or university, originally I was thinking to be a PE teacher. So I was studying the kind of sports degree with some sports science and other sport related things. But then I done football coaching qualifications. Of course, football is, the number one sport here. So it was normal. And I began coaching as a volunteer, then went well and I became academy coach with a local club, not a big club, local club. But they were in the top 10 or 12 academies in Scotland. So we played against Celtic, Rangers, everyone. And I just enjoyed it so much. My last couple of years of university, I wasn't going to the classes. I was passing the exams, but just thinking all day about I have a game on Saturday. This player could play in midfield, or he should play in right back, and I was like, if I can do this and get paid and as a full-time job to do this, then what they say, you never work a day, and that was my but in football there's not a lot of money in football. In Scotland there's not a lot of money. So it's very difficult to get a full-time position. So then it became like a very serious mission. Like you have to go 100% to make this happen. So that was the beginning. Then I started working with the Scottish Association quite young, maybe around 21, and I was involved in a performance school program. So we took the players from different academies. We identify the ones we feel have most potential, and they train every day with the association coaches in the school. And then in the evening, they can still go to the academy 3 nights per week. And then I was also involved with the national teams, men, women, different age groups. So through the work with the association, of course, increased my network and so on. Then after that, I was there from a young age, and I wanted to broaden my experiences. So I wanted to travel abroad, do different things, and that's when I went to the US for a short time. I went to China. So really, Scotland is also quite closed culture. Very traditional. This was like this 100 years ago, and now it should be the same. England is similar, but now they had an influx of so many foreign staff and foreign players that everything changed. But in Scotland, it was a little bit like that. So I knew for me to understand the world, to understand new ideas, I had to go out, and that was a good decision for me.
You said you went to the US, to China. What did you do there?
In the US, I was doing some different consultant things, director of coaching things. I spent some time in the East Coast there, and also then in the West Coast in California for a few months, and basically just developing of curriculum, some coach education. I began to get involved in those things. I'm not 20 years as a coach and moving to that, but some people just are more. For example, the coach I worked with in Scotland in the school, he was fantastic every day on the grass. He would spend many hours about if the cone is 5 meters here, 5 meters there, all of the details of the training. but I like to think more maybe like in the child is 8 years old and now is 9 years old and now is 10. What should we do for the whole journey? Like a different way that the brain is thinking. So it kind of suited me to do some of this curriculum development, coach education work. And that's what I done in the US, and then China was a kind of similar path.
So what are the cultural differences between the US, China, and Scotland?
Probably like the three opposite cultures in the world. There is some really interesting research between the European American parents and the Asian American parents, and I reference it when I speak to people about the Chinese experience. The European American parents, they raise their children kind of laissez-faire. They don't tell them you must do this, you must do that. The child has choice. They believe in freedom. They believe that the child should have fun, enjoy their youth. The Asian American parents direct. They organize. The child now is going to the school, then has a maths teacher, then has a piano teacher, and they are pushing the child more. They are more demanding, more intense. And the European Americans think that the Asian American parents are too strict. They're too much. They're it's bad. What they're doing to the child. And the Asian American parents think that the European Americans they don't care enough about the children, they don't push them enough, they allow them to be lazy, and it's bad what they're doing. So you have two opposite approaches. And what the research found, which was interesting, was that both can be successful, of course. You can be in the Harvard as a European or as an Asian, but when you have a European American child and they are raised in the Asian way, they are rebelling because all of their friends, for example, if all of your friends are allowed to stay out until 11 p.m. as a teenager, and your parent tells you you can't go outside and play because you have to stay with the adults and have classes, and maybe you can go for 1 hour until 9 p.m. and then you must come home, then you will get angry at your parents. But if you grow up with the Asian way, and then you see some European kids, and you see that if you have Asian friends and you're raised in a European way, you think maybe your parent doesn't care about you so much. All of your friends' parents are working, helping them every day, driving them to the classes, teaching them at home. Your parent just comes home, put the food in the microwave, watch The Simpsons on TV, and isn't so active. So really, what was interesting was that the reinforcement of the culture from the peers, from the people, the society around, was more important than actually the system. The systems has pros and cons, how it affects the brain. We can talk about that in a minute if you want, how people learn through the systems. But basically, the perception of, how it is in some football cultures, some parts of the US, even the East and West and South is different. In some cultures, if the coach is not shouting during the match, the parents think that the coach is lazy. And in other culture, if the coach is shouting at the kids during the match, the parents think the coach is crazy, and he has to go out, he can't work with the kids. So knowing or understanding what is the perception of the culture, what is the expectation, and then trying to adapt, I think that's a very big part of successful leadership. And that was something the experiences were more about trying to understand the culture's nuances and then adapting to that, and how it affects the players, the cultures. Well, the command-based learning style, like if you didn't do something well, I tell you, no, it's not good. It's like a certain type of reinforcement, which is good for developing habits. Just like fear. I had this discussion sometimes in the coach education about, can you learn from fear? And people always say, no, fear is very bad for learning. And actually, fear is one of the fastest ways to learn something. Because if you think of some time in your life you were very afraid, I'm sure you have very strong memories. And fear is very good for habitual learning, because you just think, I can't make this mistake, so I have to do it this way. No creativity, no variation, this way or nothing. So if you want a habit, then the command style, or on the continuum from command and the players can do what they want, more to this side is good for developing that. And for the problem solving, for the creativity, then the other style of more guided discovery, more street play, having fun. Play, for example, what's interesting is they look at play in different animals, for example, in monkeys. And, for the Chinese, play is a waste of time. Playing is not achieving anything. But if that's the case, then other animals and humans, we wouldn't be so drawn to play, because for us to evolve and to survive, for thousands of years, there has to be some evolutionary benefit to this. And what they find when they look at other animals is that play and youth is a period in the life where they can experiment with new ways to solve a problem. For example, they may play like they're hunting. They may play monkeys wrestling together, like fighting, and they experiment with new ways. And if they fail, there's no consequence. So play is the process of trying without consequence of failure. And this has some positive benefits for the divergent thinking, the certain type of outside of the box creativity, creating new solutions. But the Asians are very good, as we know, in mathematics and logical things, sciences, because they are very good in following a rule-based system. So there are pros and cons, and of course that affects also the football and how you deal with the people.
So how was your childhood?
Childhood was, so the other culture there is Scottish. Scotland is, my childhood was a little bit crazy. In that time, Glasgow, I come from Glasgow, is kind of, typically it was being one of the poorest cities in the UK, high unemployment at one time, housing in some areas not so good. When I was young, it was the highest murder rate in Europe, highest drug death in the developed world, a lot, very high rates of alcoholism, heroin, these type of things, a gang culture. So I grew up with all of these things, and it was kind of crazy experience. And when I was 17, I moved out to go to university, and specifically only chose university away from where I grew up. But I feel like in many ways it's very formative, this experience, but I also feel like I'm a totally different person now, because I had to learn to interact with the normal society after growing up there. So the Scottish culture is very impulsive, very education is bad. If you're smart, then it's a negative thing, and people will make fun of you. Or if you try hard to be good at something, people will make fun of you. Being tough is good. Even in football, when I was a child, even in my elementary school team, I was 8, 9 years old. The coach sees the game like a war. I never had any coaching about pass with the inside of the foot, or you should be in this position here, or it was just like, if you were losing, you didn't work hard enough, or you didn't fight. You have to fight more. You have to be stronger. You have to run more. You have to work harder. And the coach was always talking like you were going to a war. So you see the Scottish national team, they have these instincts where when they play against a bigger team, they're ready to run, to fight, but they didn't grow up with much finesse or much sophistication. Now it's changing, but that is a good summary of our culture. Not a lot of finesse, but a lot of blood and guts.
Let's go back to how the brain works. You were starting to go on that topic.
Yeah, and what specifically?
Maybe we can get it in the context of football. Maybe there are different styles. For example, the differential learning, and you already said the habitual learning, like when you can deal with fear, for example. But on the other hand, the playing is important.
Yeah.
How would you put that all together now?
Well, I know that there's two kind of conflicting theories about motor skill learning. Actually, this topic, just coincidence that you brought it up, but I spent a long time researching this topic, and probably looking at all the research I could find over 6-7 years. And okay, so the two theories are basically, do we self-organize or coordination pattern. That means, do I look for external cues in the environment, and then my brain is organizing a response to this? Or do we repeat a certain motor program, it becomes stored, and then we select this program for this situation? So one of them, so when you have two different approaches, one of them, like differential learning, is focused on the ability of the brain to recognize the different, not only the external, but also the internal, where, you know, the proprioceptive things, where my body is placed, where my weight is, so on, and adapt to the situation and have the appropriate coordination response. The other one is about you do something until it becomes, you know, a habit, and then in a subconscious way you respond in a situation. But the thing is, I think that both of them, they because, you know, researchers, they support their own research. So there's a big argument, but it seems to me that both of them can work in parallel. You know, of course, it's much easier if we, you know, if I had like a presentation, I could have a logical way to explain this because it's a very detailed topic. But my journey through this was that doesn't have to be that there's one or the other. For example, there's also two visual systems in the brain. There's the dorsal stream and the ventral stream, and one of them is getting proprioceptive feedback, and the other one is getting the visual feedback from the environment. And it's not to say that there's only one way. Okay, so for example, differential learning is working on the basis that you increase the change between different movements, and the body learns to recognize and adapt to different changes in environment, and then can adapt better. But the proposal by the research is that you should do this from the beginning, because this is how the brain works, and that you can't do habitual learning. You know, this is the way that you should do it. Okay, but we know from hundreds of years that habitual learning is, you know, look in China, the gymnastics teams, the table tennis. If you tell me that a repetition doesn't improve the technique, you know, it's not a fact. This is just a philosophy. And also, they've done scans on the brain, and they show that repetition forms the new neural pathway, which makes the, you know, and increases the myelin sheath, which makes the signal travel faster between the brain and the muscles in a certain way. So if you repeat movement over and over, the brain is changing, and we can observe this plasticity in the brain based on the repetition. However, repetition alone is a very slow, not very slow, it takes thousands of repetitions to create the habit. However, when you combine repetition and success, or in the, you know, the brain language, the dopamine chemical, then you now have a situation where the learning is speeded up much quicker, because dopamine increases the plasticity in the brain. So when the child is young, the plasticity in the brain is much higher naturally. So now success is very important, because things which work and work well, you know, you want to keep doing that, because when you're a child, the brain is working that, let me try and observe everything in my environment, learn hundreds of new things. But then later, your brain starts to focus on what is successful, what do I need to survive, and what is working in my environment, and then is kind of pruning back some things and sharpening other things. So now success in this way related to football, it's important to know, because if we have the young players, you know, if you want to work on, for example, changing the point of attack, if you use 6 goals instead of, you know, 1 goal, you will score more. So when I open my body and pass, and my teammates score, I have a small dopamine release. I'm more likely to do this again the next time, because I see the success. Also, on the bad habit, because this happened to me, if I'm bigger than everyone else and 8 years old, 9 years old, and I can just run, you know, not around you, but I can just run through you, then maybe the coach is saying, oh, you have to learn the step over or something, but I have a reinforcement of success from doing this over and over. So if you just leave the player to play the game, the bad habits also become reinforced by, this is successful for me. So, and the attribution of the child why this is successful is not strong, because they don't understand, you know, they just think, I'm good at this, I don't have to worry about anything else. So that in this situation, taking the player out and doing some more conditioned or isolated situations will be better than putting them in a situation where they can reinforce always the same behavior pattern. But then when the adult grows up, the brain, the plasticity in the brain is slowing down. There's evidence to show that now that the brain can still be plastic until death. So 80, 90 years old, we can still adapt and learn new things. But the brain is not developed to work in this way the same as it is when you're a child. So things like, for example, the life kinetic, I don't, you know, this German method. So this is shown. Okay, so how do we increase plasticity in the brain as an adult? You have to create a new experience that the brain has never experienced before. So you create like a trigger which says everything I learned for this environment is not preparing me for this situation. Now we have to become adaptable to change again because we face something new. So the life kinetic method, for example, you do a coordination pattern which the body will never have experienced before. For example, maybe I'm passing the ball against the wall as a technical drill, but now also I have the tennis racket and I keep the tennis ball with the hand while my brain never had to do this before. So now the chemical release, which is allowing better adaptation of learning new skills, is increasing. And this increases learning not only for the football skill, but just increases plasticity, period, which means I'm more likely to learn new skills, to understand the new tactics, to be better in the maths class, etc. Which is why life kinetic is used not only in football, but in business and school. And differential learning is still not fully understood exactly how it's working, but one thing that they found is that it increases the alpha and the zeta brainwaves, which is the same as like meditation, for example, and sleep. And is putting, for example, sleep is very important for consolidating memory and for learning. So the differential learning is increasing certain brain waves, which put the body in an optimal learning state. Now from this, the same people who are researching differential learning are now looking at, can meditation, for example, before football training, improve the speed of skill learning because it puts the brain in the same learning state. So I think, you know, we're really in the kind of beginning stages of trying to understand the brain and trying to apply it to football and to sport. So my experience with this was when I was a young coach with the association, you know, okay, firstly I was a community coach very quickly. Within 6 months, I was academy coach. 6 months later, I was working with national team players and this level of players. So it was a very fast jump for me. But of course, in the beginning, you think, oh, when I work with better players, everything will be easier. You know, they're better, but then you play against Germany, you know, and then they are much better. So then my job is not make the players better than the grassroots players. My job is to compete with Germany or with Spain or think how we can improve the players like this. So when I go to other countries, or when people come to us, to the SFA, and they show us different ideas of how they're training, I noticed that, you know, at least myself and my colleague, we, in terms of the training exercises and how to run the individual training session, I thought we had a good understanding, a good idea. I didn't see any new drills. I didn't see any new exercises. And I was looking for the exercise. Oh, what type of training are you doing in Leipzig, which is different from us? But actually, you know, probably you're doing some drills, some rondos, some, you know, game-related practices with conditions. We were doing all of the same things. But for example, when I went to Croatia the first time, this was like a career-changing experience because I saw at 8 years old, 9 years old, the children were phenomenal. You know, for maybe different reasons, maybe some genetic reasons, maybe the cultural, they're still playing in the street, the weather's nice, so on. Coordination was very good of the children. But anyway, they were ahead of us. So when they come to the national program, age 12 in Scotland, they were behind the top countries. So now we can't do the same training, even if your training is very good. If I do the same training with the lower starting point, we will always be behind. So then I developed this mentality of, I have to find something to catch up. So I have to do something that you're not doing. So that's when I went back to university to study a master's degree, but Most of this was like independent research and trying to figure out what is something that most of the coaches are not doing. This, could be the future, can be something which can 5%, 10% improve the development of the players. And that's when I came across the neuroscience and these new methods.
Thank you. Now we see you as a coach. What are your main coaching principles?
My main coaching principles are not to have any coaching principles if it's possible. It's almost impossible because all of us have biases, but try to be very adaptable. And by that I mean, if we go to a meeting and okay, if Philadelphia tell me come and show me your ideas and we will implement your ideas, and then I go to the meeting, I do a presentation and you say, oh, actually, what about this? And you can give me some evidence, or you can give me a rational, structured argument, but not, oh, when I was a player, my coach did this and I think it's better. But if you can give me a strong argument, then I just delete the PowerPoint, and we change it there. I try to keep this mentality of always looking for, what is better. There is the mentality, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But if it's not broke, can you make it better? So that's how I try to think. Don't be married to any ideas, to any principles. Just what I believe is not important. I like how Leipzig is playing. I like the style. I think it's exciting, but that's not a reason for me to take my under 14 team and train in this style. If I analyze, for example, all the patterns of the top teams and what the top players are doing, then I can have a framework of what behaviors young players need to play in the future. But to say that I like this style and I want to coach like this is not enough. So the principle is to be rational, to have evidence-based, and combine that with the practical experience.
How do you define success?
In football or in life?
Both.
Well, the answer that should be just to be the best you can be individually, and that's a big part of it. But I'm not going to lie. Also, I'm a competitive person, which is why I work in sport. And if I have a game on Saturday, I want my team to play best we can play for sure. And if you're just better, it's good. But sometimes my team plays good and you beat me, and I'm still sad. Because that's so. So I definitely have this self-improvement focus, but also I do have a competitive focus as well. And especially in the football, not so much in life, but always want to do better, to win. I don't like to lose, and that's just in my character.
How did your perception of the role as a leader shift in the last years?
I think my perception as a leader shifted in the beginning because I was a young coach working with elite players, which means they didn't respect me because of I was a player, because I was older, because I achieved anything. So I had to lead in a specific way, which was speaking to them, show them, for example, show the video clips. It's not my opinion. This whole philosophy about it's not my opinion, there's evidence. This came first as a coach. A lot with the video analysis, because the players are always challenging you, the best players, why I should, my other coach told me I should stand here. Oh, okay, but then look, here is, Messi is doing something like this in the video. Oh, do you see why? What is the benefit? And this type of approach. This was my approach to leadership. The same with coach education. If I'm in a room with people who are 20 years older than me, I can't say I'm more experienced, so follow me. But I can say, here is some evidence, here is some argument why we can do things this way. If you disagree and you have a better reason, we can change it. So this has been my approach to leadership, as an open discussion platform, and that came from the circumstances I had, and that was different to how I grew up, which was like many countries in the past was more. My parents told me. Don't drink, and they are drinking alcohol, but they said it, so I have to listen to them. And this type of approach, do what I'm telling you. and it doesn't matter what you see or what you think. And it changed in that time. And I think in the recent years, now I read more and more, the research which is kind of supporting this style is a good, but also that I think leadership is very contextual. Like I said, the perception of the people, what a good leader is in China might be different to a good leader in California, but within China, within the same town in China, the U14 team might need a different leader from the U13 team. The U14 team might be very talented, and all the players might have a big ego, and they might have 18-year-old girlfriends who are chasing them, and they are not focused. Then you have to lead it a certain way. The U13 team maybe is losing every week. They're low on confidence. They need maybe they need a different type of leader, or maybe the leader has to adapt to the players. So I think, again, leadership is about problem solving, what you need for your situation, more than these traits make a good leader.
What do you think about the quote, "Who wants to lead needs to know how to serve"?
Yeah, I think it's a very good quote, because it reflects on kind of what I said about you approach the situation from, we're working together here, and I'm trying to help you. And I think this for me came naturally because, like I mentioned, my youth time in Glasgow there were some crazy things happening. So I first, when I went to coaching, I wanted to help, just like young 15-year-old kids. I had a U15 team. They weren't hanging on the streets when they were playing football with me. They weren't drinking or doing drugs or fighting when they came to football. And I tried to push them to education. And this is before I was ever a professional coach. So my intentions as a coach in the beginning were quite pure: help the children, so help them succeed. So because sport helped me to avoid certain things in life. So when I came from this approach, I already understood my job was to help them, not to be I am the boss and they advance my career. Sadly, I think as you go to the elite and the academy and if you want to progress, this thinking becomes more and more, common. And that's the nature of, there's not so many jobs in football. It's very competitive, and this is almost human nature at times. But I do definitely agree with servant leadership, but I don't agree with the statement that you said to lead you first need to understand, because we also see leaders who are successful, who are authoritarian, but there's a saying about, if you have the best king, then the leadership system of having the king is the best system. In democracy, we won't talk about politics, but you see in America, it can be very divided. Sometimes people make elect a good leader, sometimes not. So, being an autocratic leader can be successful if you make the right decisions and do the right things, because you can get more done and it's easier in many ways. But if you work in for example, in some cultures like in China, it's very easy to be an autocratic leader because the players look to you to lead and they follow your instructions. And when they see that it's working, when I tell you, and when the ball is here, you go here, and we work like this on the training, and then you see in the game that you win, you follow more and more. And Scotland, it doesn't matter that it's successful or not. The players are bored by this type of training. They're questioning all the time. You have to explain. You have to be more creative. How you get them to follow this message? Because if you just tell them do it because I said so, then you immediately lost them. Because the rebellious attitude is it's something which is reinforced in our culture here in Scotland. Question the adults, be a little bit cheeky, we call it. Mischievous. Don't be a rule follower. So again, depends on the culture.
You mentioned before we spoke about the book Concierge. Can you explain this concept of the book and how you see it on life?
Yeah, so this book, Concierge, Concierge is a term they use in the Italian mafia, where the Godfather has a number 2 person who is the advisor. And you can see in the Godfather movie this a good depiction of this role. But the book is basically about the difference between a number one and a number two. And there's a thinking in society that for example, the head coach is the best person and the assistant coach is the second best person. But this is not the reality. The reality is that there are two different skill sets. And it's very common, for me, in this book, we see that leaders often, for example, political leaders, business leaders, often the number two is doing many things that you may consider the most important work or core work. That may be, for example, the assistant coach in football context may take a lot of the training sessions. They may have a lot of the technical ideas. They may do the scientific research and the periodization and all of these things. But maybe they're not a good person to deal with the media. Maybe when they lose a game at the weekend, if their name was in the newspaper, this is very bad, coach, he should be fired, and your children are getting assaulted at school, maybe that's very difficult for you to deal with. But for a different person, like Donald Trump is a good example, he doesn't get fazed by the media, by criticism. He doesn't care. Some people have a personality which is suited to certain things more than others. So the number one position is most commonly associated with being in front of the media, taking on the pressure, dealing more with the management issues. And the number two is focusing a lot more on the technical details. It doesn't always work like this. If you're a number one who's more of a technician, maybe you need a number two who can take some other, for example, Arsene Wenger, was a good cop, so he got Pat Rice as assistant who could shout more at the players when necessary, or rather than the opposite way around. But the Concierge is a very interesting book, because I think it is true that to be successful, this partnership between the one and two has to be strong, it has to be balanced, and there's also research into businesses which succeed, and it finds that a common pattern between the organizations which succeed is not that they have the most skillful people, it's that they have the best balance of skills and the leadership. So it's not about we just take the 10 best software engineers and put them in the team and then we make a competition against Facebook or against Google, or no, maybe you have one or two who are very good software engineers, but then you need a Steve Jobs who can present to the people, and and then you need somebody else in the background to. So it's about this balance, and the number two is often a very important role, and I think it's important to be successful that you acknowledge the number two, give them the responsibility and the reward and recognition that they need to be satisfied to do that job, and because many times the number two will not be happy to be the number one.
Now you're really passionate about leadership, about football. How do you combine your passion with family life?
Well, I don't have any children or a wife just now, so that's easier. But to be honest, I neglected these things a little bit. In the past, I had a longer term relationship, and in reflection, probably I lost that a little bit because of my focusing more on the career at times, and that's a regret. And I think when I was 21 or 22, it didn't really matter to me, because I just thought you have to, but also you have to understand, it sounds cold, but when I grew up in this environment, there was none of my friends went to university, or to follow the path that I followed and not be in prison, or to be involved in some kind of gang activity, or selling drugs, or have be in hospital for being attacked or something like that. I had to have a certain mentality, which was be very focused on you have to succeed in it. If you choose football, you have to succeed. You cannot go back to your old friends, to your old environment. It's not option. It's succeed or nothing. So you develop this kind of mentality where you're very focused on career, on everything. Now I'm a little bit, some years have passed, and I have more security, more like a middle class lifestyle, and now I'm thinking that you asked what is success. Well, maybe in 5 years, if you ask me, maybe I'll tell you that my children grow up to be good people, will be success for me in life and nothing else. So I definitely, I think I'm changing more, and in the future, I want to have more balance between the work and the family life.
Now the name of the podcast is Eye Level Podcast. What does eye level mean to you?
To me, I guess it means to speak to and understand someone on their wavelength. Would that be appropriate?
Oh, whatever it means to you is appropriate. Like there's no.
Yeah, I mean that's what I would understand. Yeah, to try and understand them on their wavelength. Yeah.
And how do you encounter people on eye level every day? How do you try to do that?
Asking questions. Yeah, that's probably the simple answer. I know that sometimes when people meet me the first time, I've heard like later when we become friends or even like begin dating or whatever, they are joking like, you were like interrogating me in the beginning, or asking so many questions about. But it's not like an awkward thing or I'm trying to fill the time. I'm really interested because also I know because when I grew up here and when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, I had friends. We were all normal kids, just played together. But then I seen how the environment they grew up in, their home life, the cultural life. Some of them, they went to prison or done many things which are they have mental health issues, and I seen how their environment affected them. So, like this is like very amateur psychology, but just from experience and seeing this, I'm very interested in people's backgrounds and how they, how they grew up, what is their experiences in life, because I know that then I can understand them as a person. Then we can really talk on an eye level.
Okay. Thank you for this insight. How do you think eye level and love are connected to each other?
Well, probably to really love someone, you have to understand them, in the sense that if someone is in a situation or going through something, if you can really understand how they feel in that minute, and you know how to relate to them, then I think it makes the emotional connection stronger. Empathy in general. If I can feel the same emotion that you're feeling, then the emotional connection is strong. So I think perhaps in that sense.
What do you love about life?
Everything. Yeah. In Scotland, like I said, there are many negative things about the culture in some parts of Glasgow. But one thing that we have here is a sense of humour. I don't know about the people you work with in Philadelphia if they are similar, but it's also kind of unique and doesn't always translate well to the US or but we are always like to joke, to have fun, to tease each other. So life is generally, we make happiness from this, and also means when something bad happens to you, for example, you fall over and you break your arm, then immediately in this culture, all of your friends will be making fun of you. They'll be laughing at you. You broke your arm, So there's no time to be take too seriously. Oh, I broke my arm. I can't go to work or feel sad. It's just they make fun of me. I have to deal with that. And you become able to make fun of yourself when bad things happen. And life is full of many bad things, But when you can make a joke about it, you diffuse the situation, and that's how I live. And I don't really, I'm generally a quite happy person. So,
How does love feel for you?
how does it feel? Hard to describe.
You can also give me some research about love if you want.
I don't have. All consuming probably is the best. Consumes everything. To the point like if you're in love and you have something happens, maybe an argument or a good positive thing with the person you love, then in work or in life, you can't concentrate properly on anything else. Hijacks the system. So yeah, that was my so like I told you, my experience and as a young person was, oh, I'm going to focus on career, being successful, football, be Alex Ferguson. That's my success in life. Then I met a person and then fell in love with her, and then like this wasn't planned. I met her, I liked her, we like each other, but then the emotion became so strong that it became like, oh, if I have to give up this job to be with her, or then I would do it. And that was, it was a very organic thing, which I only understood being in that situation and feeling those emotions. Nothing watching on TV, the Hugh Grant movies couldn't prepare me, or somebody explaining to me, when you feel like that, then you know what it is. And I don't have children. I know you do, Toby, but I imagine the love for the children is something even different from love for the parents or for the wife. So maybe in the future I'll experience this type of love where they rely on you, depend on you, and you have to give everything.
Oh yeah, it's definitely completely different. You're right. And I think for men, it's also very different. The connection to the child, it's different to the mother's connection, and it's very interesting. Yeah, you will go there one time, and then you will experience it.
Do you feel like having children helps you as a coach, and also because also I think, if I think to how I was a coach before I was in love, then I was very serious a lot of the time, but when I became in love with someone, it probably increased my empathy. I began to understand when, for example, some situations where it didn't affect me and I wasn't sad, or maybe the other person was sad, and then because I cared about them, then I was worried how they feel and how I can make it better. And so I think it improved my emotional intelligence. Have you had the same experience?
Yeah, if you would like, if you want to put it in these words, for sure. It makes you see the world different. You are more detailed on the emotions of a little kid. You try to understand if it's need to poo or pee or whatever. Like, you try to read the face, the body language. You're much more into it. You really need to focus and try to to just give him your whole awareness. You can't be with your phone and at the same time with your kid. That's not possible. Like, because the kid directly mentions it, like, is aware of that and then starts to cry or whatever. Because when the energy is going away from the kid, it's like directly boom. So it's like the kid needs a lot of attention, what is good in the beginning. So you learn also to be more focused on one thing instead of having 2-3 things at the same time. So a kid slows you down in a bit, in a sense of. And then also for sure it makes you see the world through different lenses. So you understand now every parent you're dealing with, you understand it differently. So you understand the emotions behind it and everything. So it really changes the life, changes the perception. And I would also say it makes you a better coach for sure.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, what are your ambitions in life?
Yeah, like I say now, I think to have a good balance where I would like to one day have kids myself in the future, and but also it's not only about the family but friends, I think, and these are things I learned in the last couple of years more. And when you're young again, you also have a lot of energy. You're kind of invincible. You don't get sick. As you get older, maybe you have some illnesses or some things happen, negative things in life. Then you understand what it's like to be vulnerable. Then you understand that the people who are there for you sometimes are not the people you expect. Often but family, for example, or close friends, or people who will be there, in the worst moments. And then in this moment where you really need them, you don't think about football. You don't think about who's playing as striker on the weekend. You're like the hierarchy of needs. Like you're focused more on the basic ones. And I think the joy is coming more from the relationships with people, and my ambition in life is now to cultivate good relationships, to try and help other people, not because I'm Nelson Mandela, but because I have a reward in my brain, when I help other people, that's just one of the reasons I'm attracted to coaching or to teaching, or I just know, like, I don't do well being alone in the home and focus. I have to do that to be better at my job, but I like to be around people. I like to have a connection with people, and I work harder when you tell me, "Can you do this for me?" than when I have to do it for myself. So, yeah, building good relationships is my ambition in life.
What is the change you would like to see in the world?
I would like to see, how we. This is very like, it's like John Lennon, type of stuff. But we began like as a bacteria, right? And we single bacteria, and it's all about competing to survive, and regenerate. And then we form this very complex bacterial organism, human beings, and then now we compete with each other to survive in our tribe and our clan, now in our cities and our countries and our race. Everything has been about competition. But if you look at the universe, then we're like so insignificant that planet Earth is like grain of sand, on the beach. So we're fighting and killing each other and wasting so much money and resources, competing for this small, competition will never go away because it's so hardwired in our genetics of survival, from an evolutionary perspective. So we can't just say that everybody just be happy, get along, and become happies. But it's fantastic if we can. But I think what we could do is if we work together to explore, the universe more, to space exploration, to maybe discover what kind of life form is out there. And I don't mean like, alien like you see in the movies. Maybe a life will be some bacteria which is on another planet, or some fungus, or some something we can't, for example, on this planet, and you think the Earth is quite unique circumstances in our solar system, and there's only one speck of sand. And you think in the past we had dinosaurs here. Dinosaurs don't look anything like us, or they're not similar at all. So imagine in one planet, light years away, we can't even imagine what life might look like or what it might be. But for sure, there is something. So I think, I would like us to work together, as human beings to, keep this planet healthy, first of all. But then, let's explore the universe, and we can all succeed more through cooperation rather than competing over a very small, insignificant part of the big picture.
So how does that work together? You said you're a competitive person, you hate to lose, but on the other side, you want to have more cooperation in the world.
Yeah, but that's like I say, I think that we can win more by cooperating, and in our nature, again, it's like I compete against you, or Scotland competes against Germany, or whatever, men compete against women, or I mean, sadly, this is nature. But if we're all human beings and we compete together to, on the universe perspective, then if we work together to see how we can improve things in that perspective, we will all have a better life. We will all have more resources, which is a kind of evolutionary desire. We have an evolutionary desire to explore somewhere new, to find more, to have more, to keep going, to go further. I give you $1 million, but now you want $2 million. This is one thing. At the same time, of course, to improve being happy with what you have is also a skill. I think it's very important in Eastern, for example, in China and the Buddhist philosophy, learning, because if you never learn to be happy with what you have, then you're never happy. And you see that all the time. The same qualities which make people successful, want more all the time, tend to be related to the same qualities which make them not happy once they become successful. So that's something also that I learned, trying to meditate and just enjoy the nature of science we have around us, amazing planet. But I believe that cooperation and competition are not mutually exclusive. But it's a difficult question. I don't have the answer.
What is daily meditation giving you?
I'm still not as good. I've been practicing for a while now, but I think I naturally have the kind of brain which is very active and is always racing. So I think it's more important for me to do this, but it's still very difficult for me to find peace. But on the few occasions where I have had a very good experience, um, just feel I just feel like my thoughts and everything for if I do in the morning, I feel like my thoughts and everything for the rest of the day is more lucid, and I'm making better decisions and thinking about things better. It's hard. It's hard to put into context, but I definitely feel what the benefits are. But I know that I have to improve to feel the full benefits. For example, I'm the type of person. This 2 days ago, I went to my mother's home. I went to the living room, and there's a very nice painting above the sofa. And I said, "Oh, nice, you have a new painting." And she said, "No, it's not new. That this when we bought the house, we brought this here, and they bought this house, maybe 6 years ago, and I've been there many times." And I said, "No, no, don't joke. You didn't." And my niece, who's 9 years old, so she's not going to lie. She said, "No, this has always been here." And I said, "I never noticed." And this is very typical for me. I walked in my neighbourhood in Glasgow thousands of times. I didn't notice there was some nice tree in the garden beside me until recently. Trying to slow down, trying to just pay attention to what's going on around, and also to appreciate these things. Because like I said, there's so much to appreciate. Like animals now. I think as I become more kind of appreciating things around. For example, dogs. I love dogs, and but also when you hear the birds outside, or you see mountains, or you see grass. And I come from the city, so my life was always like just going and doing what you're doing. But now I really, for example, I get more pleasure from going to see some nice views of the mountains than from going to New York City. I also enjoy cities, big cities like Shanghai, but I get more pleasure from the being around nothing, and just appreciating the nature.
What does down-to-earth spirituality mean to you?
Probably the same like I described, that there is special things all around, and it applies well to me because I'm not a religious person. I'm not a spiritual in the common sense of the word. To be honest, I'm probably more like rational or scientific thinking type of person. But there's amazing things, like the scenery we have even in my neighbourhood in Scotland. We have many mountains and hills, and when we have sun for 1 week of the year, then everything becomes green with the rain, and it was a very beautiful country. And my whole childhood, I didn't see that. Now I see it, and I see that there are special things. There are miracles happening. You have children. There are miracles happening in normal ways all around, and that's amazing. But you have to learn to see them.
You said in the beginning your identity is football since 10 years. And if somebody destroys this identity, you don't know really what to do. So I'm now destroying it completely. How do you feel? Who are you now without this identity?
Well, hopefully the people who know me well, who are my friends and family, hopefully they think I'm a person who's quite passionate about helping them and to help other people do well. So hopefully I'm someone, if there's no work, then I hang out with my friends all day like I used to do as a teenager, and we just talk and we make jokes, and that's it. I hang around and joke all day, and in a career sense, that's wasting time, but in a life sense, I have a lot of fun just being around people and making jokes and sharing experience. Also, like how it is. Like if you hear a good song and you like the song, maybe you enjoy it, but you enjoy it more when you can tell someone else, listen to the song, and you see that they also like it, and you share the enjoyment together. So again, it comes back to this connection between people. I think that's. But your identity, I also understand this because you think about youth players in youth academy. if they play football all of their life, and then 8 or 9 years old, they go to academy, their parents and all of their family friends, they see them as a football player. They're talented. Of course, we know there are millions or thousands of young players in academies around the world, so this is not unique. But to their parents, to their family, to their friends, they're a talented football player. Their whole life they're in the youth academy, and then, 16, not good enough. You go out from football. Their whole self-esteem is based on, I'm somebody who's good at football, and then you destroy it. And then they don't know. They don't know what they are. They don't know what their identity is. They don't know what they're good at. Because to reinforce our self-esteem, we have to have some competence in something, or we want people to value us for something, to say, Toby is good at this, that makes us feel good. And then when you take away something like that, then it can be damaging, and you have to rebuild a whole new. And you see the same when players retire after a professional career.
What was the most formative moment in your life?
Moving away from Glasgow, where I grew up, because everything that I thought was normal was not normal everywhere else, and then that was it. Everything I thought was normal was not normal everywhere else, and that was the beginning. At 17, I realised that everything is just about. It's all very subjective. What I think is right, what you think is right. It's, for example, in Scotland, something we make a joke about, everybody will be laughing. You make the same joke in US, maybe you go to prison or people are offended, and you lose your job. So perspective is everything. And I learned that a lot of the things that we do growing up here are negative behaviors, and I had to try and change myself.
How was it then when you moved to China? What did it give you for a new experience?
Unbelievable experience. Hard to summarize, but even more extreme, realizing that everything is about perspective. For example, let me give you an extreme example, but it paints the picture. In for example, in Western culture, if an adult is hitting the child, then it's seen like a negative thing. Now, in the past, for example, my father's generation in the UK, maybe in Germany, I don't know, the teacher can hit the child with the belt in school. That's normal type of punishment still. But these generations, like, if I see a parent hit the child hard on the street, this is very shocking to me. I went to China and I saw this. The teachers are hitting the children, the parents are hitting the children. I was just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, But when you're there you either have two options in these situations. You just judge them and you say that China is backward and they're not educated. But that's not true, because China is a very advanced civilization from thousands of years. They didn't merge with the Western cultures early development. They also developed education, healthcare, society, not because they learned from us, parallel to us. They done it separately, and also they created these amazing systems, for example, healthcare and so on, which are different from ours. So then you have to try and understand what is the mentality of the people. Now, does that mean I'm going to hit my children? Definitely not. But the people who are doing it are not necessarily bad people, just because you just have to understand that, things that we can hold that are very deepest values, like as a human value, we believe as a human value, no human should do this. To somebody else, this is normal behavior. And then, for example, if you try to understand it more, you look at the animal kingdom and how does a dog train a young dog? They give a little bite, to that. It's not to hurt, but it's a little it's a correction. That's how in the animal world is very common, this kind of physical reinforcement. I don't know if you ever see the TV show, The Dog Whisperer, Cesar Millan. He's an expert on training dogs, and it's the same thing. He gives like a little touch to the dog and snaps the dog from the brain state, which is in. So actually, we are animals, and from an evolutionary point of view, this is very normal behavior, that the parent makes physical contact with the child to correct something. But of course, now our society evolved in a way that this is not acceptable. But now I understand society evolved to tell me this is not acceptable. Not because it's acceptable, not acceptable. And almost everything we think, we believe, this is what our society says, and it's, yeah, you have to be very open-minded to be able to take yourself out of that and to understand a totally different perspective.
And to be non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental, exactly, perfect, yes. Because most of the British coaches I seen there, they were judgmental. They seen many things. People are, doing a pee in the street, on the main road, things like that, which in the West is just impossible to see something like that. And they're just thinking, like they're thinking this, this society is, thousands of years behind. But that's not the full picture. It's just exactly. If you approach from a judgmental, you stay stuck. You know only what you know. But when you're open-minded, then you don't have to take this behaviors, but you can learn to understand a different way of thinking, and it helps you to understand why you think how you think. Because then you go back and say, well, why I don't do this? Why am I different? Then you can trace it back to maybe it's something which happened in your lifetime, in your society, from your parents, but maybe something happened in 1,000 years ago in your, ancestry or whatever. But there's a reason why you behave this way and why they behave in that way.
All right. So now I had a lot of questions for you. Do you have a question for me for the end?
Oh, we could talk a lot, but I'm just, so you created this podcast. It's obviously different from, because you're a football coach also, we connected through football. So what made you approach a podcast in this direction?
I think there are many things what you already mentioned today. For example, when you said when you get to know a person, you ask a lot of questions. And a podcast is like, it's questioning all the time, basically, how I approach it. So I like this because I'm very curious about the people. So I like to understand and get the history behind people. And the other thing is also what you said as well. It's like when I do work for myself, it feels like, okay, I do it. But if I do something with somebody together, it feels like it's very strong and bonding. So whatever podcast episode I do, I've always feel bonded with this person. And it's like, it's a trusting atmosphere. And we both will not forget it our whole life, So it's like, it will always stay for us. Like we did this podcast, we can speak about this with a beer or whatever. Like it will always stay there. And it's something I think very respectful in these days. It's like, I just listen to you. And even though you might tell things I don't agree, I try to be non-judgmental, just like listen to what you say. And even though I might be a complete different person, I respect completely your point. And that's what I try to teach myself, but also to live for others, is be non-judgmental, ask questions, but don't judge the answers. And that's what I try to create here, a non-judgmental space where you feel comfortable with really sharing who you are and not trying to play a role like that I feel good with you and that you give the answers the teacher wants to know, So yeah. You can really basically say what you want. And that's what drives me for this podcast is just to create a space. And I feel like every question I asked, I'm very happy about every answer.
Yeah, that's a super answer and a super concept, and I think you did a very good job of that because, I didn't feel in any way during the time that I had to give a certain type of answer so yeah, that's fantastic. What do you want to do? What's your ambition with the podcast?
The ambition is, I'm like right now, it's not a marketing instrument or something. It's just, my ambition is that your friends are listening to it and my friends basically. And then some of them will maybe give it mouth to mouth, they will give it to somebody else. And it's like, even though it's only 50 people maybe who watch or listen to this podcast, I think it's very personal for them. So I try to create personal experiences. So for example, when your mom is listening it, or whoever is listening to it, and then, oh yeah, that's a new thing, or like, I didn't know him in this way, or yeah, it's I often get these things, and it's not about, for me, like that 2 million are listening to it. It's more like, okay, put it on the relationship basis. And then for sure, if somebody asks me like, oh, do you know somebody for this, I can say, oh yeah, listen to this podcast. You might like get a first impression on Chris, for example. You might like him, and it's a very personal instrument instead of a curriculum or a CV, you know, or
That's true.
something like that, because it's really personal. And so if, for example, a sporting director wants to hire you and he listens to this podcast, he gets a bigger impression and you than like just getting, for example, a recommendation or just a CV.
No, very true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but it's true, and it's so hard to do in the interview process, to find out about a person really, because they're so on guard. So yeah, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so what I always do in the end, 1 minute of silence. So we just proceed the whole thing, what we did. And then after this, I give over to you for the last words. So you can think 1 minute about your last words. So, Chris, thank you that you took the time today. I learned a lot about, not only about the city of Glasgow, but about your background, your history, and yeah, about you are my first Scottish guest, so I'm very proud of that. So I give over to you for the last words.
No, I think something I took from today was that it proves, what you said. That sometimes it doesn't have to be an end goal to why you're doing it. I had no goal to do the podcast, and you also don't have any real goal, but just to talk and make a connection, and I feel happy at the end, just from making a relationship with another person, speaking to another person. And I think sometimes it's undervalued these days, to just talk to someone, get to know someone. Maybe that's some of the most satisfying feelings you can have, is building relationships, but we maybe don't spend enough time in our lives focusing on that these days. So I think that's the podcast proved, we're both happy after at the end, and we didn't have to we didn't have to achieve anything, we didn't get any money for it, but it feels good,
Yeah, you're right. I feel the same, like this approach of, oh yeah, let's meet for a coffee. And the other person is asking why. And it's like, yeah, just meet for, let's, we don't like, it doesn't have always to have a topic or something,
Yeah,
that's, yeah, I like that you said that. Yeah.
perfect, perfect.